What's up, guys? We got a great show planned for you today. Between the GM battery plant going on in New Carlisle and also local new business growth here in South Bend. But first, let me introduce you to today's guest host, Mr. Councilman Eli Wax. Eli, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and doing this with us. Now, I didn't twist your arm or do anything and threaten you with violence to be on here. So thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Fully voluntary.
That's right. Yeah. So I guess first off, if you can give us a recap or a quick introduction of who you are, what you do for our local community, and also about the law office you work at. I know that you've kind of lived a few other places as well. So kind of tell us also when you started living in South Bend.
Absolutely. So I moved here, or my parents moved here when I was about a year and a half old. So I grew up here, went to school here. I left for high school, for a second half of high school. I went to Ohio for that, to Rabbinical High School, followed by Rabbinical College in New Jersey, and then later in Israel. Came back to the States when I was 22, I think.
Yeah.
And went back to another Rabbinical College in Jersey.
Sure.
At that point, shortly after, met my wife, and we got married, settled down, started in Jersey, but then we moved back to Baltimore, where she's from. We lived there for a number of years, had a couple children there. I went to law school during that period of time. And upon graduation, I had a job opportunity here, and my wife agreed to leave her family and come out and be closer to my family, and so I thank her for that. But
that would have been a hard ask, right?
I asked, and she loved the idea of living in South Bend.
Sure.
The quality of life and the way to raise our children. The idea of staying in Baltimore, there's just financially more pressures, and just the day-to-day pressures of life are significantly more pressure than they are here. So the idea of being able to raise our family in a little bit of a more easygoing and positive, friendly environment was something that when that opportunity presented itself, it's something that we definitely jumped on. So we moved back here in 2015.
Sure.
Right after I took the bar, and I started working in a real estate firm, not a law firm, just a real estate company. Did that for a couple of years, and then joined Anderson, Augustino, and Keller. I think it was in 2017, so about 6 years ago. I've been with them since. Wonderful firm.
Yeah.
Happy to work there. And about a few years ago, the opportunity presented itself to get involved in local politics. I had been involved in some minor capacities. I volunteered for the election board as
Sure.
an election day attorney, and a couple different things. Yeah, it's actually, we could talk about it if you want, but it was a really great experience doing that for a couple of elections. But there was open seat, the City Council 5th District for South Bend. That's the southeast side of town.
Sure.
Which we're in today.
That's right.
So
on the ground.
So Jake Teshka formerly held the seat, and then he won election for state representative, which opened the seat up on the City Council. The way it works in Indiana is that if there is a seat that becomes open, the party that had the seat previously has a caucus. They get their precinct chairs. And so there was a mini election of, I think it was 11 or 13 precinct chairs. So we had that the night before Thanksgiving in 2020. So I won that caucus, and I've been representing the southeast side of South Bend for the past 2.5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, and they pick the best of the best when they do it that way.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I guess the other question is, so since you've been involved in local government, what has been some big impact things that you're looking to accomplish, not only in the last almost 2 years that you've been, almost 3 years that you've been a part of the local city council, but also what are you trying to accomplish the next couple years? I know you're going up for re-election this fall, so going through re-election and maybe even the next couple years or even a couple terms after that, what are you trying to accomplish?
That's a great question. So the main things that I try to really focus on is trying to understand what the core priorities are.
Sure.
So if you kind of take a look at it, you make a circle, like a target kind of thing, where you have the center and then you branch out and you slowly move out of that circle. So the first thing you have to focus on is, public safety, police, fire, EMS.
Yeah.
Streets would come then, infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, that kind of stuff. Utilities would probably be in there as well. Then you start to move out, and parks and venues, and you keep on going out, and all those things are important, but you have to make sure that you're prioritizing the most important parts. So
exactly.
That's been a focus of mine. This past year, we were able to renegotiate the police salaries with the local FOP.
That's awesome.
And they have the highest salaries now in about 20 years. And so they were
kidding.
Absolutely. It's super exciting. So they were down to a little bit over 200 officers instead of the about 250 that they needed.
I see.
So they were down to about 80%, 80-something percent of what they need to fully protect and serve our city.
Sure.
And
I didn't even realize the force was that big. So right now it's 200. And at times they've been at 250?
Well, let me correct you. So
yeah.
last year we were at about 200.
I see. Yeah.
And, excuse me.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we were
I don't have a cough button yet. We'll get that.
Okay.
I'll do one too.
So we were able to renegotiate those salaries, including increasing the base salary and then working on a lateral transfer. Since that time, it's been gangbusters. We've been able to expand. They're at full force now, just in several months.
My word! Just because of the renegotiations they redid.
I think there's a lot of factors, but absolutely,
right. Sure.
Salaries and transfer incentives were a major part of it.
Yeah.
I've had people ribbing on me from other municipalities neighboring that they're upset that we're pulling officers away from them.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I feel bad for them, but I feel better for us.
They need to step up their game, don't they?
Absolutely. We need to support the men and women who serve and protect us.
Yeah. Well, I love how you describe it. It's like a circle, and I almost view it like with a circle within a circle within a circle and a circle, so that you almost focus on. I know we talked on this in previous phone conversation, but you really need to knock that center circle out of the park if you want to be able to focus on the other circles. So if there's certain things like you're taking care of and accomplishing, that's great. So huge thank you to that. And also, you might not like this, but Matt Helmkamp, who is one of our owners here at Gates Automotive, gives you huge credit for helping us get to where we're at with this store here today with rezoning and helping us through that process. So huge props to you for doing that. I also know that you're also pro business in this area and making it easier for businesses in South Bend. So huge thank you to that. And I hope that our building here at Gates Automotive that we're in right now is a kind of like an example of that, and that we're leading by example within our community on the south side of South Bend, because it's so important. We're off Ireland Road right now. We joke that it's the gateway to South Bend, but like in all seriousness, it is. This is almost what people have a first impression of if they're coming on the south side.
Absolutely. It's a big thoroughfare just coming up 31.
Yeah, exactly.
A block or two away. And, this is my first time. I was here for the groundbreaking several months ago.
It looks a little different, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is amazing. I can't wait to be here when there's actually, when you guys are actually up and running.
You'll be invited to our grand opening. You know that, right?
I look forward to it. And while I appreciate Matt's giving me the credit on that, it's part of a team. And
You're right.
I think that, I was happy to be a part of that. And when they came into the council for a zoning issue, I was happy to fully advocate for this new change and for this growth. Being able to create an environment where businesses could come in and thrive and be successful.
Exactly.
It really benefits everybody in the city. It's not just the businesses, it's the employees that they employ, it's the people that could use those businesses. All those jobs create ripple effects. It's really a wonderful opportunity, and especially with the company like Gates, which not only provides by giving jobs and taxes, it's also a company and a family that looks to see how they could give back to their local community. So
sure.
Economic development generally, but especially for a company and a family that's looking to give back in so many ways. So I was happy to be part of that. And that, like you said, that's part of an overall view of, within reason, to make the city as available and open for business as possible.
Yeah.
And that's really something that we've done well, and I'm going to give credit to other people on the council and, and the administration.
It's a team event, right?
Absolutely. And individual projects could be sometimes more nuanced or more complicated, but I think that I share that value with a lot of people at the city of what can we do to make South Bend an environment that businesses want to come in, and whether the businesses that are here make sure that they stay and grow local as opposed to finding better opportunities elsewhere, and for new companies to come in or expand their footprint that's here. So that's something we've been working on. That's something that I look forward to doing for the next 4 years as well.
Yeah, sure. I'm looking forward to it also. So let's talk about this for a second. I don't know if you're here at the time when we built our Toyota store, which is just west of here. That would have been between 06 and 08 during that time period when we first started the plans versus when we finally had everything fully functioning. When we first created that building, and again, I wasn't here at the time working for Gates. I was here in the area. But everybody thought that we were crazy moving from the center of South Bend downtown to now down to the south side of South Bend. And we thought at the time, like, man, we got to think for the future, because this area, Ireland Road, the Michigan Street exit, it's a very great location. And I know you don't live very far from here. You're like, what, 5-10 minutes?
Oh, drive, yes.
Okay,
5 minute
exactly.
drive from here.
You're right. Yeah, if you're walking, it might take a little bit longer. Yeah, so 5
I
minute
try to
drive.
walk a little bit more lately, but yes, driving just a short drive down the road.
Yeah, so it's cool that you live here in this area, and you're also being able to help us, make this area more successful, to drive business so that there's more businesses that want to come here and to grow and to make it a location. Back when they were worried about like Scottsdale Mall, oh man, this was a long time ago, 25 years ago, they were concerned about the longevity of this area, but I think you look at it now and you think it's a no-brainer. So it's amazing with the business that's been growing out here. And then the other thing we want to talk about in the news is this week they have somewhat started moving forward with the GM battery plant that's going to be out in New Carlisle, just west of here, which isn't that far. Now, I know that's in the county, so you necessarily don't have a say in that, but I think that that's going to have a huge effect on your area, the city as a whole. They are going to bring, and you probably know some more details than me, so correct me on this. They're going to bring 1,600 jobs by 2028. They're going to invest almost $4 billion. Obviously, they're not going to know the total number. We've heard stuff as low as $3 billion, high as $4 billion. And then they're also going to create a lot of construction jobs. And I think it's about 2,500 construction jobs. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
that's the number that I've heard. Yeah.
Okay, so it's close. But I think the economic footprint that's going to bring to this area is going to be amazing. And before we even started rolling, one of the things you said was, hey, this is not just going to be that line of business, but we believe that there are going to be other people in that manufacturing process that will lay their foot here in this area and help grow. What can you talk about that as far as economic development?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's
Sure.
super exciting. So not South Bend directly, but we live in a community. The community is, countywide as well, and you have to give props to the county officials, the county commissioners, and the county council. Really did what they can to make this project happen. There were some hiccups along the way. For
Sure.
a while, we weren't sure that whether this was going to actually happen. So obviously, props to GM and Samsung that
that's right.
agreed to come in, but they really had partners on the county government, both on the council and the commissioners, to see what they could do to help make this project happen. And like you said, in the short term, there's going to be about 2,500 construction jobs. Those are great jobs.
Awesome.
And then following that, there's going to be, I believe the number they said is 1,600 people operating that factory. And those are great jobs. And we also believe that there will be a ripple effect with that, with other businesses coming in to be close to that facility. So we know in manufacturing, there's nothing in a vacuum. So, they're going to be one part of the manufacturing puzzle. But there's going to be other companies that are at different stages of those operations that will support that GM facility that will likely come in. And we're trying to show that South Bend's open for business.
Yeah.
And so that turns into housing. We need new housing.
That's right.
We're going to have to upscale our education. I've had conversations with South Bend School Corporation. There's charter schools that are also looking towards this, on saying what we can do to make our school graduates workforce ready, because we have some really good jobs. These aren't minimum wage jobs that don't have a long term. These are manufacturing jobs these are career jobs. And so we need to do what we can to get our students that are graduating high school ready for these jobs. And I think we're starting that process, really expanding on that. And then when people have money in their pockets with these good jobs, that all gets spent. And
in this area.
Right. And so this is where South Bend could be the beneficiary on this a lot, because they're on the west side and it's a relatively more rural area. So a lot of that spending, whether housing or just other economic growth, will be here in South Bend. And that's something we're excited for. And speaking with administration, I know that's something that we're going to be working and see what we could do to be a partner in that as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's just cool to see the growth that something like that can do for this area. Just like you said, it's not just manufacturing, it's not just lithium batteries that are being created, but the entire supply chain could adjust to this area, which is a great thing. more people are going to be here, the residential area is going to grow, schools are going to grow, local offerings are going to grow as far as new businesses that are created because of all that money spent economically. So I think that's a win for everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's just amazing to see that growth of business that's happening here. And like you can even look at real examples that happened in this area. So like, sure, this was a long time ago, but think of Elkhart County. They started doing RV manufacturing out there, and that turned into not just RVs that were being manufactured, but there are steel providers. There are all these different vendors that were created to create those products here in this area alone. And that's also leveraged other areas. So not just RVs, but also boats. Now all of a sudden you're having all of these other types of vehicles that are close to it, but not RVs that are being created, which is just amazing and phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So I really see the same thing happening with the battery plant that GM's working on out there for New Carlisle. I think there's just going to be so many ripple effects that are going to happen that we can't even quantify right now, which
Absolutely.
is amazing.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And if you look at the other, some of the other big developments that are happening locally with the Beacon Tower project, which is another $500 million that'll be in South Bend.
Oh my word! I didn't know it was that big.
yeah. And so the city's really working to be a partner on that, and that's going to be in South Bend. But all these really feed into each other. You know, you want to have a city that has jobs, that has health care.
Yeah.
Schools isn't really in the purview of the South Bend city government. Yeah. They have their own board, but you know, there's important to be a partner in that. And without good schools, you know, you're not going to be successful in the other areas. So, but it's really a viewpoint of growing our city, and there's a lot that's happening, and it's really, really exciting. There's a ton of residential housing that's being built. Some has been approved and getting ready to start. There's a lot that's in the pipeline. So we already know that the new jobs are coming in. We're building the houses for them as well.
Yeah.
So it's really, really exciting future for South Bend.
Yeah. And it's cool with someone like yourself on the council that is willing to get out there and knock on doors, meet people, find their needs so that we can be prepared for that. Not just needs they have today, but also needs for the future. Whether it's new residential areas that need to come in, and we need to be thinking about that and helping plan that, but also, just like you said, making it easier for businesses to do business here in this area. So you've done a lot of things as far as helping not only zoning with us, but also rezoning some other areas right here in your district alone on the south side of South Bend, which is great. So huge thank you to that. I'm going to get into some hard questions now. So let's do it.
Absolutely.
So what would you say has been the biggest struggle being on the council over the last 2 years? Is it the backlash that you get from the public? Is it having to sit through long meetings that never end? Like, what is it? I want to know.
I love being on the council. It's really great.
You're right. We should start with that.
So I would say that it's on the surface, I think people would recognize that the biggest challenge is I'm the only Republican in a council of 8 other Democrats.
Huge props to you.
The clerk is a Democrat, the mayor is a Democrat, but at the same time, by and large, they're great colleagues. And while we disagree on some policy matters and we have different views on different priorities, by and large, really good people who have a shared view of making South Bend a better city. Sometimes we disagree on how to do that, but there isn't a lot of petty fighting. It isn't a lot of, we're all focused on trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And there are challenges sometimes being alone on certain issues. That's definitely difficult, but I'm standing on my convictions on those.
Yeah.
And, I don't have my views based on party or based on things.
Sure.
I am a Republican because of my views.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I'm doing what I think is right, and it's not too hard to stick by your convictions. And sometimes I get angry phone calls or angry emails, but I'm happy to speak with anybody.
Sure.
I don't mind speaking with people that disagree with me. I've been door knocking lately, and I've had the most amazing conversations. The most interesting conversations are with the people that disagree with me and want to hash it out, and I love those. And sometimes,
and I know I laugh at that, but like seriously, that's one of my favorite things is talking to someone that you disagree with and learning from them and learning their perspective on it.
Yeah, and I don't see any. It's not stimulating to have a conversation with somebody who agrees with me on everything.
Yeah.
So when I get to a door and someone wants to really hash it out, and as long as we're having a respectful conversation and we're treating each other with respect, which is something that I always strive to do.
Sure.
that's wonderful. And
Yeah.
more conversations is great.
Yeah, and so just going back to what you said about the council, it's cool that the struggle is also like the highlight, I think, of maybe what your career has been with them. So being able to look at that as a team effort and being willing to understand that everybody's there to help make South Bend a great place is something really cool.
And sometimes it comes to light where there'll be a proposal or a bill or a program that isn't something that I'm excited about.
Sure.
But I could go back to my colleagues and say, well, I know what you're trying to accomplish here. Can we do it a little bit differently, or can we try to change this or improvise on that? And sometimes there'll be something that I originally wasn't on board, and I still don't love at the end, but I was able to make it something that I think is a better product.
Sure.
And they don't need my vote. There's eight
you're
Democrats,
right.
and they could just, they could tell me pound sand.
Sure.
And almost always there's open for a conversation.
Yeah.
We could discuss it, and sometimes we make, in my view, progress on improving those bills. Sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
But it's a great avenue of people who are dedicated to the city.
Yeah,
And
that's cool. And again, it's not me to sit here and say like what my beliefs are, like if it's Democrat or Republican, but it's cool that both sides are willing to work together to create what's best for South Bend and what's best for all the cohorts within South Bend. So that's amazing. So props to you guys.
yeah, I mean, there was a great example. We just had our council meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
And so I always forget the letters that it stands for, but they passed a new law in Indianapolis, which there's a program which allows a certain amount of income and sales tax to stay locally to use for the major venues.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so a lot of it's going to Four Winds Field development, which is super exciting. They're going to really expand that ballpark, and it's a pillar of our city, and it's going to be even better and more amazing for the long-term future, and that's super exciting.
That's great.
But that was something that the Republicans and Democrats, the delegation representing our area, went to Indianapolis, and they all stood together, Republicans, Democrats, and this was a bipartisan bill, and it got bipartisan support, and that's always wonderful when you could get something and say, we all agree on this, let's work together, put the partisan stuff aside. And there's times that the partisan stuff is really important. Those are values issues, and whatever side you're on, those are important issues, but it's important to recognize that on the issues that aren't that partisan, that put everything else aside and work together on stuff that we all could agree on.
Yeah, and what's best for South Bend at the end of the day. That's
Absolutely.
Great. So also, let's do a quick plug for you real quick. So this fall, you're running and you're actually campaigning right now.
I am.
So give us like a recap, or at least like the brief highlight cliff notes of what you're working on for the next 5 or 6 months to make that possible for the re-election.
Absolutely. So I started door knocking. That's always the most fun part. I love it. I love meeting the people that I represent. Not during election season. I don't have that.
And seriously, there's like no sarcasm there. Like you actually love that.
I do. I do. My cards are on the table. I love knocking on doors. And,
Eli, I love that.
so normally I don't have the excuse to go in and knock on people's doors. Not in election season. People I think would find weird if I just started knocking on the door and say, "Hey, I'm your representative. I want to say hello. What's for dinner?" But
you got tea?
But now it's great. I have the excuse to knock on people's doors and tell them what I've been doing and hear from them what they would like to see.
Yeah.
And it's really, really incredible as we get closer to elections November 7th.
Yeah.
So as we get closer, there'll be more, official campaign stuff, mailers and advertising, and that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But right now it's just getting on the ground level, knocking on doors, meeting people, and I love every day doing that. So
that's awesome.
It's super exciting. I'm able to talk about, we mentioned working with the police force to try to give them the support that they need. And I got to give props to Mayor James Mueller on this, that South Bend has historically been terrible on maintaining its streets. We still have a very, very long way to go, but we've started putting more of a focus and turning that ship around. I would, he knows I always do, I would implore him to set aside even more funding for that. And as we get into budget season now, I will be pushing for that. But I have to give him credit because he's putting a bigger emphasis on the street spending than mayors previous. But that's really, that's
shout
really
out to Mayor James Mueller.
Absolutely. Not that you would expect that from me, but we actually get along very well, and we work together, and like I said, we differ on a lot of things, but we also recognize our common goals and see what we could do to work on them.
That's great.
We're improving on the streets a lot, and that's something that I will continue to advocate for, and I'm hopeful that over the next 4 years we will spend even more on our streets, catch up the backlog, and try to advance that. And just work on just make the city of South Bend a safe and pleasant place for people to live.
Sure.
What that does is
That's important to everybody.
Absolutely. And it makes it an environment that people will come in to create new businesses for. Something that's extremely important with any business that's looking to come in and bring their employees to is this a place that my employees are going to like to live?
Yeah.
And will I be able to get good employees from here? So that's education the schools have to figure that out. But everything else, the safety, just the ease of life living here. And that's what we could do from the city side, is just to make it an environment that people want to come in, bring their businesses, bring those jobs, make it a place that people want to live. So that's what we're doing, and that's what I look forward to doing for the next 4 years.
Yeah, well, it's so welcoming too, because now, so I actually live in Middlebury, but I grew up in Elkhart, and I was out of the town and the area for a little bit between those two time periods, but in the early 2000s when I was in Elkhart, we really didn't want to come to South Bend. There wasn't too much to offer. It seemed like things were dying off. As a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult, there wasn't too much back then that brought people down here. And now it's completely different. So me and my wife, we a couple times a week will pick a place to go eat. That sounds like we go out to eat a lot. We don't, I swear. Like, we go out to eat like once a week. But we think about it a couple times, and there's times where we will intentionally come to South Bend, even though for us it's a 45-minute drive from our house, just so that me, my wife, and my daughter can experience something in South Bend, because it's such a welcoming environment. So I know that maybe now we're driving on roads that were paved by other generations and other councils before, but it's really cool to see you continuing that charge. Mm-hmm. Also, since you brought up the repaving of our roads, you probably know this, but like, there's roads in South Bend that are now memes because they were so bad even a couple years ago. So it's going to be cool to see that fixed and created.
Absolutely. Was it Domino's that was doing the pave their own roads project? But yeah. So props to Domino's, but
that's right.
Hopefully we'll take care of that ourselves. So.
Yeah. So Eli, we're going to go and draw this to a close, but huge thank you to coming on here.
Absolutely.
Matt Helmkamp, Jeff Gates, Joel Gates, they want me to thank you for not only coming out here being a part of this today, but also helping us create this beautiful building that we're sitting in right now. We do have a lot to look forward to with the opening of this new project. We're going to have you out here again to do this. That big bang you just heard, they're actually doing the final pavement of the layers outside, so it's going to look beautiful now that that's all done. Again, we're looking forward to having more conversations like this. So Eli, thanks for coming on and doing this.
Absolutely.
I know it was a little bit of a step out of your comfort zone. I called you and you were like, you want me to do what?
That's what life's all about, stepping out of the comfort zone.
Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Car Talk presented by Gates Automotive. Stay tuned for more episodes and more content. Huge thank you to Eli for taking some time out of his day and out of his busy schedule to make this possible. Stay tuned for more.
Car Talk is presented by Gates Automotive, Northern Indiana's premier local-owned auto dealer, specializing in Toyota, Chevy, and pre-owned vehicle sales and service. Gates Automotive has locations in South Bend, Mishawaka, Granger, and Elkhart. For more information, visit gatesautomotive.com.